Welcome back to another episode of the Rollin My 5.0 podcast with KASL Customs and the Infamous Project. On this episode, we have special guest Dr. Jamie Meyer. Jamie is the current owner of Cars Illustrated magazine. He has been the announcer for NMRA, FFW, WFC, NMCA, the voice of Ford drag racing. He's the first ever editor of NMRA's Race Pages magazine, the founder of Mom's Racing, a heads-up Mustang drag racing series that ran for 25 years, and he wrote several hundred tech articles for 50 Mustangs and Super Fords magazine, Muscle Mustangs and Fast Fords, and Hot Rod. Ladies and gents, this is a resume, so buckle up for a fun one. We hope you enjoy this episode. Okay, boys, I got to start off by telling you that maybe by apologizing. If I look like I'm sweating buckets, it's because this son of a gun behind me was just outside on my driveway. I'm trying to get the coolant burped out of it. It's a long story. I'll tell you if you want, but it's about 9,000 degrees in here right now.
Yeah, you guys are like going through a heat wave. I think a lot of people are, but I'm kind of in the same boat because I've got 2 AC units, and I hit the thermostat an hour ago in here to start cooling down the podcast room. And then when I just walked in, I'm like, it's 87 degrees in here still.
Ooh.
So yeah, I just reset the AC unit for this side, and I got a fan blowing from the outside in through the door here, but it's cooler than what I was working with. It was 95 degrees in the shop today, is what I was working with.
Yeah, that's violent. Yeah, so I wanted to say that so you don't think if you guys ask me a question and I'm sweating, I'm not lying. Okay, so
okay.
Yeah. I probably will be bullshitting too, just for the record.
Yeah, I don't know you, Gary, but I'm starting to get to know you real quick. So I'm on to you, pal. Okay, I'm on to you.
Well, Jamie, thanks for joining us, sir. This is a pleasure to have you on with us.
Thank you, man. It's an honor, and I'm looking forward to talking about Mustangs. It's going to be fun.
I think this is the first time we've had a credentialed individual on the podcast here. We got the doctor.
Yeah, we'll see how long that lasts with you guys. You might. We're all going to be at the same level here. So,
I know you shared your background with us, but yeah, like what's your doctorate in, or like what's the educational background? Because I think it's always interesting when we get somebody who's so automotive focused but actually has credentials behind them. Like I've got some credentials too, but they are not car related in any way, shape, or form. Well, I guess technology and stuff you can always cross reference and take elements from here or there, but what's your story, Jamie?
Yeah, I went to school for a long time, really heavy into the sciences. I went to a little school in upstate New York called St. Lawrence, got my biology and chemistry degrees, and then I went to the Syracuse Medical School, and I earned my PhD in anatomy and cell biology with honors in 1997. So
wow.
I did a 8-year postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Cincinnati, looking at therapeutic targets for atherosclerosis, heart disease, strokes, things like that. And during all that time, I was into Mustangs, and I was street racing, and I was writing for 50 Mustang magazine, and I started announcing for Fun Ford Weekend, and then World Ford Challenge, and then NMRA, which just went out of business last year with the National Mustang Racers Association, which was started in 2000. So it ran through 24, 25, and had a 25-year run. And so I was doing all that stuff while I was doing science, and people didn't understand why I wasn't in the lab on the weekend, but I was out screwing around with cars. So it was fun.
That's wild, Jamie. I mean, to Chris's point, I think this is at least the road he was trying to lead down is like, you've got doctors, and then you've got like, hey, I'm a doctor of teaching, education, whatever, right? But you're like a proper doctor. Like, this is no joke.
Research scientist probably is more accurate, but yeah, no, I appreciate it. And I don't even want to pretend that I kept up with those disciplines that I learned all those years ago, but you know how it is, guys. Your background becomes you. in some form, and I learned a lot about writing, a lot about scientific process. So when I went on and worked at General Motors and was working on the performance parts and Coco Camaros and things like that, I could interact with automotive engineers at a really high level while I really wanted to market cars and sell stuff. So it spilled over.
So did you ever actually put your education to practice in the traditional sense, like in the medical field? Did you ever have like a career in it, or did you just study and you just went straight into cars or automotive?
I think the closest answer, right, is, postdoctoral fellowship where you're really pushing basic science. I used all of that training as a PhD student. And I think maybe more practically for you to understand it, I did a lot of surgeries, but never on a human. You know what I mean?
That's right. I mean, I got so many questions because Chris and I, since the start of this podcast, we've sort of told our stories, which was, we went through the corporate route, kind of similar to what you've done, I guess, Jamie, in that, you thought you were going this way, but then the whole time this magnetic automotive world is pulling you in the other direction. And it just gets to a point where, I mean, it's the gravitational pull's just too much to deny anymore. And you're like, okay, to hell with it. I'll give up the big boy job, right? Where my wife was happier and whatever. And I'll go down the broke route and I'll chase this whole car thing, right?
Yeah,
so
I think it's more important now than ever, right, to follow your passions. And I got 5 nephews that are about 25 years old, and one of them is a neuroscientist kind of following what I did. It's really weird, but he's just crazy head over heels into cars and 5-liter Mustangs. And I'm like, look, do the science stuff, but side hustle like I did. And he runs the Cars Illustrated empire for me. But in general, anybody that listens to this, right, anybody that asks me, I say, look, if you love something, you do it, because you don't want to hate getting up in the morning and go do a job. You can't live like that. So you got to do stuff that you love. And we're going to talk about 5-liter Mustangs tonight, but I think, that vehicle shaped my life as I'm thinking about talking to you guys tonight. And I think about all the crazy stuff I have going on. If it wasn't for those early articles in 1985, 6, 7, 8, that I was that super focused high school kid and I just read them like they were a love letter, I wouldn't be able to talk about cars at the level I am today. I wouldn't be in the industry at the level I am. So I'm extremely grateful for Ford and the Mustang team and all the crazy people that you and I talk to that are into these cars. It's more insane now than when they were new, and I want to talk historically with you guys tonight, but you're right. You got to love it and do it. And these cars have consumed a lot of great time for people, right? We have good times around these cars.
Yeah, I'm really excited, right? Because me and Gary, well, I guess you've got some experience on us is the best way to put it.
Sure.
And right, so we were, these cars came out and we were still far from a driver's license. So call it being late to the game. Obviously, we read the articles and, we had the 5.0 Mustang mags in our hands and all that stuff. And being in Canada seemed like, we were in this other continent. It didn't seem like there was just a line, you know what I mean? There was no internet, or it was just starting. So you were kind of like living vicariously through these articles, because very rarely did editorials happen up in Canada. And then we had, I forget his name, Gary. Who'd we have on the...
Mark Houlihan.
Yeah. And, we asked him the question, why not the Canadian cars? We always had all these amazing cars up there. And he's like, well, we didn't have to, there's enough down here. There was no need to travel to the Great White North to be able to get the coverage. So, and Gary will tell you, he, mail order a catalog of parts and all that stuff. But you can speak even before this stuff, like before the aftermarket even came about. So I'm really excited to hear this.
Yeah, so if you'll allow me, I'm going to tell you the history of the 5-liter Mustang, and then
absolutely
kind of to where you guys take over, which is I think most important, like you framed it up really well, the one thing you left out was there was no internet. There was no social media. So these magazines, and I'm going to talk about some of them specifically, they are the foundation of what you guys do every day. It's the foundation of this entire industry. So it's 1985, and it's carbureted 5-liter Mustang GT is out, and it's a fast little car, right? But in 1986, something really amazing happens. Ford adds fuel injection to the 5-liter, puts the 8.8 rear end in it, has true dual exhaust, 5-speed, pretty quick little car. I remember distinctly, and I'm just obsessed with cars, right? I'm like a 15-year-old kid, 14-year-old kid, and I'm reading everything weekly. My grandparents are taking me to the drugstore so I can grab car magazines. And I remember an issue of Mustang Monthly comes out with a 1986 Mustang GT that had been modified. And they put 355 gears in the car. And the car slowed down tremendously. And the conclusion at the time was, these computers are so sophisticated, you can't modify these fuel-injected cars. They just don't respond like the old hot rods. Everything's over, man. It's dead. We're never. And I remember as a kid reading that story, and I was like, wow, that sucks. Like, I want new crazy stuff. I want the latest, crazy tech. And I will tell you, so we'll talk about the evolution, but years later, I specifically went back to my massive magazine collection, and I pulled out that issue. And at the time, what I didn't know was there was a quarter-mile drag test before and after a gear change on the car, and they published the short times. At the time, I didn't realize with the 355 gears, the car spun halfway down the track. So right. Their test was BS. They screwed up. They should have put a slick on the car. Then we would have seen, oh, wow, it picked up 3 or 4 tenths. So that was leading into 1987. I just want to set the stage, right? Like, oh, this is over. Mustangs suck. They're going to be as fast as Ford lets it happen. It's 1987. Better heads, better cam, better intake. The car's, starting to evolve. And remember, if you're a kid at that time, like 1 year is like the equivalent of 10 dog year, or whatever. Like it seems forever for the next car to come out. So in June of 1987, this magazine is published. And you'll see it on the wall behind me. This is Cars Illustrated. This is the famous Volume 4, number 6, that came out in 1987.
Okay.
This is the start of the 5-liter Mustang movement. This single magazine is what freed up the entire world to realize these cars were going to be incredible. So the car's on the cover. This is a black hatchback LX, red interior. The article starts on page 40. It's titled 5 Liters of Fury. So Cars Illustrated tested cars differently than anyone before. Maybe there was a Cars magazine in the 60s, and then no one's ever tested cars like this before. So the writers were incredibly focused on quarter-mile performance and very, very talented mechanics, drivers, builders, and they just knew how to make cars fast. Okay, that's critical. The other thing is they're located in New York and New Jersey. So at the time, you've got Englishtown and Atco dragways sitting below sea level. And some of your Canadian air, right, in the fall, you guys have the same magic, right? But you're below sea level with air density. The writer buys the car. It's his car. And he beats the crap out of it to get the best quarter-mile times ever. So if you'll let me, I want to read a couple key paragraphs in here that will help you understand what made this so magical. So he writes, not even a radio. The car's window sticker said it all. The space provided for options was left totally blank, save for the few magic words that spelled out the Mustang 50-liter package and New York State mandatory rear window defogger. Stripped for speed and drag strip bound, the cheapest lightest, purest, no holds barred, pure fun American production car we could possibly dream up that you can buy. The Stang flat out hauls. It is a supercar in the finest tradition of the breed. A car whose balls have balls. Stuff your right foot into the carpet and hang on. The tires break. The ass end boogies to the right. And the hyper-tuned Fuelie 302 screams for dear life. Make no mistake about it, you, my friend, are hauling ass.
Wow.
Nice.
The car goes on to run 1390s in the quarter mile, which was unheard of since the 1970s. The other part that Cars Illustrated did with every car they got is they took it street racing. So there's pictures in this article, and there's a description of what cars you will be able to beat street racing your new 5-liter Mustang. So you can only imagine, as an 18-year-old kid, holy shit, this is the greatest thing I've ever read in my life. But that issue allows everybody to go crazy on the East Coast. Detroit had Brian Wolf, right? You had Ford engineers who were making it happen, and it takes off. The subsequent articles in Cars Illustrated, later issues, they talk about this thing called the air intake silencer. They talk about bumping the timing on the 302. They talk about shift points in the quarter mile, the science of how to make these cars fast, and all of it goes crazy in 1987. So guys, I just thank you for giving me that moment. I wanted to share the exact time when the 5-liter Mustang took off.
That's awesome, Jamie. Yeah. It's kind of wild because, to your point about the 86, I know our good friend Bill Butler, he talks about this too, right? And he's like, well, he was in Detroit at the time, still is, but he says people were losing their minds when the fuel injection started coming out. They're like, this is horse shit. Like, give us jets, give us metering rods. Like, we're not pissing around with this new UFO stuff, right? There's no way these cars are going to be terrible. And I think it was maybe the start of like kind of the tinfoil hat era, because everyone's like, nope, now they can control everything, right? Leave us with, our flat blade screwdrivers and we'll rejet our carburetors and whatever. This whole electronic thing, they can shut us down anytime they want, whatever. So yeah, to your point, like, it was a mess apparently then. And, but then in 87, to your point, a couple of the right people got the keys to these things and went, holy shit, here we go. And that was, keep in mind, pre-mass air, right? When everything rechanged again. And everyone went, oh, Christ, now we can put cams in these things too? Like, let's go.
Yeah, so you have 89 comes along, mass air sensor. You have that GT40 package, that gorgeous tubular GT40 intake. Oh my gosh, you can swap heads and rollers, right? So people started doing some engine work. They had to trick the speed density computer to work. In 89, Ford helps unleash the car, and then obviously the cars came with them. California 88 models, of course, and 89 and up cars. And the way it goes. Cars Illustrated is also important for another reason. Cars Illustrated gets so much mail, so much interest in their 5-liter Mustangs and their project cars. They have a single issue publication called Muscle Mustangs and Fast Fords. This is the first issue of Muscle Mustangs and Fast Fords, published in 1988. Cars Illustrated goes on to publish the first 4 issues of Muscle Mustangs. It becomes so popular that it's made its own magazine, and Jim Camposano and Evan Smith take it to levels that are bigger than most telephone books at the time, 350 plus pages of just 5-liter Mustang stuff. So now historically, you can look at the companies that were built by the 5-liter Mustang, and you can think about the mass air companies and the head companies and the exhaust companies and the body kit companies, and they're still around today, and they transitioned to other vehicles. But that whole industry, I would guess billions and billions of dollars built on that little 5-liter Mustang.
Yeah. It's so wild, hey? I think about that quite often too. The vehicle or the aftermarket manufacturers that still exist today, albeit probably not making the same quality they did when they were little ma and pa shops, but that's a whole nother topic of conversation. But how many little startups got their essentially like made them what they are due to this silly little boxy 5-liter Mustang?
Yeah, hundreds of them, right? Like, we know them
easily.
We know them. Yeah.
So if, let's say, 87 didn't come around and the 5-liter or whatever, let's say it dies in 85 and doesn't happen, how do you think that would have impacted the aftermarket world of American muscle cars?
Well, I think I think Ford did a test in 1989. They talked about the probe taking over for the Mustang, right? And the Mustang may not make it. Chris, I think it would be horrifying for enthusiasts like us, right? There's a real easy test. Go to any drag strip or any road course and count how long it takes you to not see a 5-liter Mustang. And now, if you can go 60 seconds, I would be shocked, right? So it's ubiquitous. I think about all of the drag racing that I've been to, massive productions at the time in the early 90s, mid 90s, early 2000s. The Mustangs were the show. The National Mustang Racers Association was a huge event. It would bring 300 to 400 racers together 10 to 15 times a year. World Ford Challenge paid $10,000 to win it in 1998. It was on ESPN. I mean, it was insane what these events were like. And there was no other car. There was nothing like this.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think, if you can sort of imagine all of this not happening. And how did anyone, this is like anything in the world, like you never know how things are going to go until you have the foresight to look back and go, oh, okay, this all lines up and makes sense. But to your point, Jamie, like the Ford was looking at the probe like it was going to save the world, right? And I mean, man, did that live a short life, right? Like in and out like a fiddler's elbow was the probe. And here the Mustang's still rocking and rolling.
Yeah, and performance is always going to sell the bigger brand. Racing is always going to sell the bigger brand. Trust me, I've built a 30-year career on that simple concept, right? So the sex appeal of an affordable car that is performance-oriented and gives you that special feel. Think about how many F-150s the Mustang has sold. Think about how many Escorts it sold, how many minivan, you got to understand that these performance vehicles do so much more. And I can't say pure American with you guys, but pure North American, right? Like it does so much for the brands of the companies that build it. It just transcends the auto industry. It's very easy.
Yeah. Jamie, before we go too far away from it, so you held up that one issue there, the most recent one that you held up, and
muscle.
Yep.
Sorry, my glare is terrible today.
So, okay, can you explain this to me? So, Cars Illustrated released 4, like probably at the time something they termed like special editions that were called Muscle Mustangs Fast Fords.
Yeah.
And how does that all unfold?
Yeah, the writer, look, publishers got to make money, and that's a little bit of an ironic statement given where the publishing industry is right now. But at the time, right, there was no websites. The office was just lit up with Mustang advertisers to the point where the publisher could say, well, if I do one of these little, should know this off the top. I think there's 76 page magazines, and 50% of that is advertising. And I have a 20% sell through rate. Right, they can get a bunch of money out of some extra work from their writers. So Cars Illustrated's writers write extra Mustang content. They put it in those 4 special editions, and that's how Muscle Mustangs get built. It gets built. It goes off to be its own magazine at that point. Issue 5 specifically says this is a standalone book, not a Cars Illustrated special edition.
So did Muscle Mustangs and Fast Fords break away, or did it always operate under the Cars Illustrated umbrella?
By the 5th issue, Muscle Mustangs and Fast Forward is its own publication. It's still published by Harris Publishing at the time, but it's its own book, its own staff, its own editor, and probably most importantly, its own advertising sales team.
Okay, and there was 4 of these issues that were released over what span of time?
Less than 2 years. So, in 88, 89, you got some amazing good stuff in Muscle Mustangs.
Okay, so somebody behind the scenes is going, okay, every time we release one of these bloody Mustangs or Muscle Mustangs and Fast Forward editions, we can't keep them in stock. Let's build a business on this. Am I reading this correctly?
Yeah, and publishers have done this over the years, Gary, right? So Cars Illustrated as a publisher was rather general. They had Corvette action, Mopar action. There was a Pontiac book. There was a general muscle cars book. And they would do one-offs, right? Maybe a Buick special or maybe a hot rod special. And if it were to take off, they would run with it. Muscle Mustangs was one of the very few that did.
That's interesting. Yeah. Because I'm genuinely curious about how Evan and all the guys get in the mix. They must have come out of some sort of other editorial background, right? Actually, yeah. I know Mark didn't. I think Mark was a mechanic. But he enjoyed writing.
There's 2 different publishing locations, right? So Campesano is in the original Cars Illustrated group, and they have Steve Collison as an editor originally, and then Campesano takes it over, I think, after Steve passed away. And then Evan replaced Campesano. He went on, this might be insulting to your audience, but he became the editor of Super Chevy at one point. and as Schneider gets bought up by Harris, which gets bought up by Source Interlink, eventually they closed down the Schneider offices, which is the New York office, and they move it to Tampa. So Houlihan's working on Muscle Mustangs, and he's working on 50 Mustang. They get combined into 50 Mustang and Super Fords under the great Steve Turner, the long-haired genius that he is. And Evan replaces Campy at some point to take on the captain's chair at Muscle. So,
okay.
So when did 50 Mustang come to fruition?
I got the first issue here. I think it's 1990. But yeah, so it's spawned. I mean, there's enough of an industry. I think the point is there's enough of the industry where you've got these magazines coming along covering it. You've got independent racing that's taken on. Other people are moved by Cars Illustrated, right? I think the greatest example for me is Al Noe's a disciple of Cars Illustrated. Al Noe runs Summit Racing. So you've got the guys in charge of Summit who we talk Cars Illustrated every time we get together, which is this, fun little secret society, I guess, but it doesn't need to be secret. We have an awesome Facebook group. I've got one of my nephews running it, Connor O'Hara. We got 28,000 people that are rapidly following Cars Illustrated, and we'll put up old stuff. We'll put up new stuff. There's a cool website, carsillustrated.com. We have digitally reprinted all of the Cars Illustrated magazines and all of the Muscle Mustangs. So you can go to Cars Illustrated right now. I think we charge $5 for a digital download, and you can read these magazines on your iPad.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'll have to look up because I'm looking at my wall because I've got 2. My silver notch was in muscle Mustangs in March of 96. And then there's an article in 98 of Mustang Monthly. So I'm just kind of racking my brain around, how many publications that these cars, it was almost like, what was it, like collecting cards, you know what I mean? You had O-Pee-Chee and Upper Deck and whatever, and it was all the same stuff, just a different provider. But like the trend was that big that it merited all these different, sources and angles, which is just incredible. Like, is there any other car that did that in that time?
Not as intently, Chris, right? Like you could say the small block Chevy built hot rodding, right? You had all these spare 32 Fords that were lightweight. V8 Chevy comes out, the guys are coming back from war and they build hot rods because they're used to working on tanks and fast airplanes, right? So they just create the entire infrastructure of motorsports in the United States in the 40s and 50s. And then the V8 comes out right in 1955. So everything goes crazy. But Chris, that's a question that old NMRA racers will talk about when we get together. Just like, man, there was nothing like NMRA. I think you see some of it in the Texas 2K stuff, right? That really intense gathering of passionate people. But understand the cars now are just, we started at 225 horsepower with these cars. That's, thank God they were lightweight, or it would have been a bad story, right? So, but we took them to incredible levels, and now you got to smile, right? You see superchargers on production vehicles, you see turbos on production vehicles, and I think the 5-liter Mustang industry had a lot to do with proving the potential, right? Like the aftermarket led the way for the OEMs by showing, wow, I can put a Vortec or a Kenny Bell or a Pro Charger on one of these little 5 liters, and the thing makes 2x the horsepower. And when they don't drag race them, these things tend to last for quite a few hours. So it's fun, right? This is the overlap of big production vehicles, performance cars, and then the crazy stuff we do in our garages.
So what's your take with the SVO, knowing that I think 84 was the first year of that, making pretty much V8 power with a turbo, but like it never really took off. So was like the difference just literally the fact that we had a V8 that was making 200 horse versus this 4-cylinder with a turbo on it, in your opinion? Or do you think the aesthetics of that SVO front end just killed it?
No, I think it was an interesting car. For me, it didn't hook because it didn't attract me because it wasn't built as a quarter-mile street race car. And the people that I loved weren't street racing that car, right? And you read a passionate example like Cars Illustrated of what that V8 did to the industry. There's nothing like that with the SVO. There's one awesome racer, and his name is escaping me, but in NMRA days, he would show up with an SVO, and it was I think it was an 8-second car. It might even be faster, but he kept the 4-cylinder drivetrain and just kept working on it all the years. But there's only one guy that did that, so the rest of us spent $10,000 on an 87 notchback and went out and became heroes with $1,000 in mods, like that's just the time. So,
yeah. It's so funny how that differs completely when you get over into Europe, though, right? Because like they've ran with 4-cylinders, 6-cylinders, like some V8s, and well, I don't know, I guess you could argue both sides. In some ways they've perfected it, in other ways maybe not. But and I'm talking back in the late 80s, 90s, right? But yeah. They you know what I mean? You think like the Porsche Boxer motor and stuff. And I couldn't help but think when you were talking about that, Jamie, like answering Chris's question, like I always say that these cars touch all 5 senses, and they do it like perfectly, each one of them. right? You got the sound, you got the touch, you got the feel, you got the smell, you got everything going on all at once. But then when you take the SVO Mustang, right, you're like, well, where's the sound, right? Where's the, like, all of a sudden the equation doesn't line up anymore, even though, like, you know, for what it's worth, they were little rocket ships, right? And they probably would have rivaled one of the, I think they did rival these things stock, did they not? Like they ran a quicker quarter mile.
I know they rated a 86 SVO at 205, if I remember right, and the V8 was 200. So
right.
So that told you what Ford really wanted to sell, right? So or try to.
Which is why I'm always so curious at, like, what's going on in the boardroom at that time, right? Like, is there somebody at the table from, I don't know, Italy, right? From their Ghia 79 Ghia days, whatever. Like, who is influencing this stuff and how does that all unfold? If I could just be a bloody fly on the wall, I would love it. You know?
Well, I mean, my guess is, look, the platform was already paid for, right? It had been around since 1979. It was a very high profit car. And if they kept the price low, they could move big volume. I think 86 production was 200,000 units, which is a lot of sports cars, right? A lot of two-door cars. So big volume, affordable to make. Chris, you know, you've got videos out there about all the little plastic pieces that break on these cars. They broke when they were brand new, bro. They were garbage when they were brand new. The ashtray door broke on every single one of them within a week of jumping in the thing. And they haven't gotten better after 40 years of getting kicked around, you know. But I love watching people restore them. Chris and I have had this conversation. I've got to get a black notchback back in my garage. I turned mine into a race car. It's out there. I know where it is. Someday it might come back, but I love it that people are so passionate and they follow you guys so romantically over these cars. It's awesome.
It's, you know, one of the funniest things for me, Jamie, is not that I got called crazy for being into these cars when I was in my late teens, but I did get called crazy for how crazy I was about them. And it's hilarious because now you fast forward 25 years from that point, and here we are in a roundabout way making a living off of all of our previous crazy nights trying to figure these things out and whatever, out in your mom's driveway type stuff. And to think that 25 years later, I mean, I don't know if there's a barometer for this, but like, could they potentially be hotter now than they were then?
I think it's a great question because the car I would liken it to is a 1969 Camaro, and you look at where the 69 Camaros are. You know, I was fortunate to bring back the Copo Camaro when I was at Chevrolet Performance, meaning Copo Camaro was around with an iron block. Dealers were installing them. Then, you know, the aluminum ZL1s were produced, 69 units in 1969. In 2011, we showed another Copo Camaro sold as a part number, and it came out in 2012. The run lasted 12 years, 69 units each year. Like this, that's the type of space that the 5-liter Mustang occupies in my head. Like, I see you guys chase rare models and educate people on one-offs, and I'll read a magazine and I'll think about, you know, what the Steedas were doing and the Celines were doing, and some of my favorite tuners, Lidio Acabelli, had packages, you know, of very defined kits, and Anderson Ford, and you know, you look at that stuff and it's freaking magic, man. I think another huge part about this, guys, is right now you can name any car in existence, and you can make that thing as fast as you want to if you have enough money or if you have enough ambition. In 1987, there was not a speed shop on every corner waiting to mess with fuel-injected cars. You had to be extremely creative, extremely tuned into what was going on with these cars, and that creativity pioneered this entire industry that we're talking about. So to go back now, right, and after you've ripped these things up, and you know, I think about the roll bars and how many front ends got torn out of these cars, and none of them have the real drivetrain in them anymore, right? And hell, I was at drag strips where the cars would take off, it would twist, the T-tops would blow out of the thing. You know, it was never fixed the chassis or the roll bar. It was, I got to get more T-tops. It sucks, you know? So it's like, that's how these cars were treated. They were just race cars. They were just fun. Let's go street racing. How do I hide the nitrous under the front seat on this thing kind of cars? So,
yeah. You know, Jamie, to your point about the speed shops not existing like they do today, we had a fella on a few episodes ago that was telling us, and I could have these dates wrong, but like for what it's worth, you'll get the point. He was talking about putting a Cobra independent rear in a, 87 through 93 car in like 2004 or 5, wasn't it, Chris? Like we're talking like
when the Terminator was new, he was already swapping it.
Yeah, way before. Well, I mean, definitely way before I knew this was even possible, for one, let alone, like no one had written an article on it or anything to that nature. Like he just kind of looked at the two and went, let's give this a go. Right. And we talk about this every once in a while, how for as many of us that splash shit all over social media that are out there, I'm always curious about the guy that doesn't even have internet at his house, right? He's got the flip phone still at best. And what's that guy or gal doing? What are they working on, right? The quiet ones in the back of the room. Those are the ones that I always want to talk to.
Well, look, I think this is, for me, the ultimate hot rod platform. That's what we're talking about, right? And it's an incredible car as it was delivered, but as you guys well know, the upside is the potential. And I was just in a meeting not too long ago with a CEO who was trying to figure out his automotive aftermarket company, a huge company. And he was coming from outside of the automotive industry. And he said, I just don't understand why we don't just have stage 1, 2, 3, 4 for every car, and that's what it is. And he struggled to understand that this is as much an art form as it is a science. It's more of an art. Like you guys build your cars and you express them in certain ways. And at the core, that's what hot rodding is for me. And you just want to give options if you're a manufacturer. And if you're teaching your kid or your nephew how to build these cars, you can teach them certain things. They'll ultimately take the car where they want to go and what's valuable to them. And that for me is always fun to see what's next on a 5-liter Mustang. So
1,000%. I really wish I could remember the term that the guys in Detroit used. Apparently it was started in and around the foxbody years, but it was something to the effect of, those are payment cars or something they called them. Like anybody can go in off the street, sign their life away, and for the next 5 years you own that car kind of thing. Yeah. And it's funny because they said these were, I don't know if it was payment cars, but anyway, these started that craze. And now in today's day and age, you got like all the Dodge Hellcats and everything else whistling up and down the road. But my point being is this fella you're talking about that just can't get his head around, why wouldn't everybody just want to walk in off the street and sign up for a stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? It's like, because then you got the same car as your neighbor. Yeah. Like who the hell wants that? Yeah. And like you say, Jamie, like it is, I don't know, like I joke with my wife, I say like the amount, sure, this car or these cars cost me a lot of money, but the amount of money that I have to spend at a shrink if I didn't have these cars, like this is my therapy. In all honesty, I like swearing and throwing wrenches. Like that's what makes me feel good.
You guys keep putting up these amazing cars you're building. It drives me a little bit crazy, right? Because then I think I got to get back in the game. And I still have my 86 GT, but that one, like the biggest thing I'm thinking about is repopped gator back tires. That sounds amazing to me. We used to just shred those things when the cars were new, and now you got to spend $500 to get tires for this thing again. So
yeah.
Well, tell us about your 86. So that's like your first one, and you've had that. So for how many years?
Yeah, so it's June of 1987. I graduated high school, and my my mom is really interesting. She's 87. She's still around. She graduated high school in 1956. She still has the 1956 Ford Fairlane with the Thunderbird 312 engine option in the garage.
No way.
So I had a pretty good idea I was going to get a Mustang or on my high school graduation day. So I've told this story before, but I told my mom, look, I want a black notchback, 1987 black notchback, gray vinyl interior, no air conditioning, no options whatsoever, and it has to have a 308 gear. She ordered that car for me. And it was going to be 2 weeks late. Delivery was going to be 2 weeks late for high school graduation. So she decided to buy a used 1986 GT for more money than the stripped down 87. So I love the car, Chris, but I always wonder who got that 87 notchback that my mom ordered for me. But
right.
It was literally on order. So it hit a lot somewhere weeks after you got your 86 and someone else has that car.
They do. So if you hear this,
yeah, that would keep me awake at night. Holy Christ.
This is almost like Bob with the Celine, with the the missing the one VIN that didn't that snuck through, and he tracked it down and built that SA car.
Oh yeah.
So I get an 86 GT. I love it. It's kind of an interesting car. The only option is the sunroof. It's a no air conditioning 5-speed car, and I did a few things to it early on, right? So it had a ram air, it had 355 gears. I had M&H Race Masters, a Hurst shifter, and it ran like 14 twos. I got out of college in 91 and bought a used 88 notchback for like $5,500. And I think with a shifter and underdrive pulleys, that car ran 1380s the first time I took it to the track. It was extremely fast. And ultimately, I think it ran 13.1s with just tires and some south side bars on it and 355 gears. But that car would become Project Mondo Stocker in the pages of 50 Mustang magazine. And there's 6 or 8 stories of that car. Stock motor, we put a Vortec Mondo supercharger on it, which was the biggest supercharger you could get at the time. Of course, it bent the rods and broke the motor, but it was just an awesome story. And then that car was built by the late, great Jim Summers, who was a Pro 50 superstar and tuned all these cars through the 90s and into the 2000s. And ultimately, Mondo Stocker ran 8 70s with Carlo Catalanato driving it with just a little 347 and no intercooler on a stock suspension 10-inch tire. And that was just the kind of cars you could have in 2000 when that thing came out. It was easy to build an 8-second car then. So,
wow.
But that car is being raced in Kentucky right now. I keep watch of it, and I'll get the car back someday, I hope, and I'll make it a nice street car so I can drive it around. My wife will demand air conditioning, so we'll probably break down to put air conditioning on it, which I probably would like that too. So
that's the one that filled the void of the 87.
Yeah. So the 86 is still around. It's got 29,000 miles on it. It's been lightly restored by Livernois Motorsports, my buddy Dan Millen there. And my buddy's got it right now, Procopio Cusimano, keeping good track of that thing for me. He's a BF Goodrich drag radial racer from NMRA days gone by. I still have the 86 GT. They've aged really well. I'm sure you guys will agree with me, but the 4 headlight cars are just, I still get a smile every time I see one. So they're cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so true. Huh. Yeah, that so you kept saying, actually, Jamie, like you didn't want air conditioning when you were a kid. Where were you living in the US at the time?
Yeah, I grew up in upstate New York, so I was close to Canada my whole life until I moved to Cincinnati in my late 20s. But you could get away with no air conditioning, and you're a kid back then, you don't really care. So
yeah. No, we talk about this quite often. Like, so the green one behind me, non-AC car, cool. It just got AC over the winter, and I am absolutely tickled to have AC. Like, it's silly. You couldn't get the smile off my face with a baseball bat, right? Just feeling that cool air coming from the vent. Because I spent from 17 till now, all those years sweating my ass off. I mean, even trying to get that thing with no air conditioning to just blow a little wind on you with the thing cranked over to cold, like anything you could do to knock the edge off of a hot day. And, but it's funny. I think back to when I was a kid, and sure, there were a couple of those moments where you really wished you had it, but I'm like, I don't know, like, maybe I'm just more of a puss now. I don't know what it is, but I really want AC.
But I think what's interesting is that was, for me, the last car you could order like that. After that era of Mustang, everything came with power windows and power locks and air conditioning, right? Things got heavier. But I always look, when I'm looking at a used car ad for a 5-liter Mustang, I'm always looking for roll-up windows. I don't know what's wrong with me. I just think that's so charming that the thing's still got roll-up windows, or something like that. So there is that historical reference for me always, that these cars could be ordered optioned however you wanted it, right? Like if you wanted a luxury barge and a convertible with an automatic, you could get that. If you wanted that little green car with no options and it was going to be the fastest car in the neighborhood, you could do that too. That's what made the car so special for so many people.
Yeah. So funny story about roll-up windows. My green card did come with roll-up windows, but by the time we started having kids, I had already converted it over to power. And
you're getting old, buddy. Sorry.
Well, it's funny,
guys. You're ready.
Well, Jamie, living up here in communist Canada, where you can't tint your front windows. I mean, the rule book's long and heavy way up here. So, but I always had tinted windows, and I've had so many tickets over the years for tinted windows. So I got sick and tired of doing the lean over while trying to drive when you see an officer and get your passenger window down, right? So that was how it all started. And I thought, well, how convenient would it be to have power windows too? But anyway, so by the time we had kids, this thing already had power windows, and everything that anyone buys nowadays has power windows. So it wasn't until I bought this 1970 GMC half-ton pickup that I bring it home, and the kids come out to the garage to check it out, and they get in the cab and they go, "Dad, what's this thing do?" Right? And they can hear the old window kind of moving. They're like, "Is that how you roll the windows down?" And it hit me there. I was like, holy shit, my kids have no idea that that's how things were done. Like, because all they've ever done is just push the button. But then it makes one think too, like if you pull up beside somebody and both while driving and both of you have your windows up, the international call sign is, right, roll her down. Nobody does this.
Right. It doesn't work.
What do you, yeah. So
it's carried on. It's like the ghost of Windows past. I got it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I don't know, maybe that's just us old guys. I don't know. Maybe the kids do that now. They pull up beside each other and just point down. I don't know what the hell they do.
They don't drive cars anymore. Come on. You know what the answer is. So
there's that too. Yeah.
I'm kidding, kids. Sorry. Don't send your hate mail to my LinkedIn account. It's okay.
It is very, very true though. We have probably bored people to death talking about it, but yeah, like our generation that lined up before the DMV even opened to write your learners, and then you were there the second they opened that you could get your legitimate license. Those days are gone. Like,
well, and things have happened historically since this car was made, right? Like we touched on it, right? But there's a lot of federal regulations on safety equipment and crash testing. So the cars have had to get bigger and heavier, and the cars have had to come with standard equipment, right? You've got to have backup cameras as an example right now. You've got to have ADAS, driver assistance programs. So you've got heavier cars, but if you think about it, in 1987, you could walk into a Ford dealer, you could order a 5-liter Mustang, and you could pay under $11,000 for that car, brand new. The average transaction price for a new vehicle in the United States in 2024 is over $49,000. That's just for an average car. So it hasn't been that long, but we're talking about quadruple pricing on some of these cars. So back to why kids might not drive, they can still talk their parents into getting a cell phone. That's their escape, right? You and I had to go to the meetup place, the street race or whatever, but you could afford a 5-liter Mustang in 1987 on pretty much any income level at $10,000. So we think about that. That's another reason why these cars are so popular, why this content is so important, so people can understand where they came from, their place in history. And I think these cars have an incredible runway, right? If I'm right, and this is the 1969 Camaro of, let's say, our generation, guys that are 35 to 55, 60. You guys talked about it, I think, in your last podcast about the $200,000 93 Cobra. I think you're going to continue to see these very low mile, very desirable, the black notchback with no miles, because there's guys like us that realize every one of those cars was bought as a race car and got destroyed. And if you have the one unicorn that's a good example, it's always going to carry big value, like the Yankos and the Copos and any weirdly, uniquely optioned 69 Camaro. So I love sharing the stories and the passion. I think you guys are really onto something. I'm very grateful you guys are keeping these cars alive, right? This is super important for people to see these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's an interesting thought experiment, Jamie. So 2020, right? The COVID era that everybody wishes they could forget, I'm sure, but was a really drastic bump for these cars. It was a drastic bump for anything recreational, but these cars rode that run up, right? Do you think that changes where it goes now, or did it just kind of speed things up from where it was already heading? Because I have a thought in my head as to why a lot of people got into these cars during that era. Like, one, money was cheap. Two, these things were always in the zeitgeist of people that are coming of, getting into their 40s and they got a few bucks to spare and whatever. And they go, you know what? To hell with it. I want to relive my high school days, and I'm going to get one of those goddamn fox bodies, right? Because everybody went out and bought them, paid way too much money at the time because they were buying on the upswing. And then it's kind of funny because I think a lot of them got the cars home and maybe they didn't run right, or maybe the AC didn't work or whatever. And you're trying to sell this new purchase to the wife, and she's like, this thing smells like gas, right? And it's hot in here and it rattles and all the fox bodyisms, right? And then bango, they all go up for sale again. Now, I'm kind of cross-threading a handful of theories here, but I'm interested to know your thoughts on, do you think they were still heading in this trajectory and COVID, or the years of COVID, just supercharged all that? Or was it COVID that maybe made it now what it is?
Yeah, my short answer is the 5-liter Mustang is a little bit of an outlier. So the data of the entire automotive aftermarket industry goes something like this. Since 1975, the automotive aftermarket industry has increased between 5 and 10%. I'm talking top line revenue number as an industry, okay? We're somewhere between 50 and $60 billion right now as an automotive aftermarket industry standalone. What happened in 2020 that you framed it up beautifully, but we were forced to stay at home, and people did things at home that they hadn't been able to do. And one of them was they pulled these cars out, they got back in the cars, they started working on restoring projects that they had not been given time to work on, right? The automotive aftermarket saw a massive increase from 2020, middle of 2020, April, May time. It takes off and it lasts until the end of 23. and it is way over the normal annual growth. So we saw established companies that have been around for 50 plus years have increases in revenue of over 50%. That is absolutely economically impossible. There's no new product, there's no new marketing team, there's no efficiency that will take that mature company to that kind of growth rate. So it was exactly what you described. I'm locked home. I've got a whole bunch of time because I'm not driving to work. Other than the kids, nothing's standing in my way. In fact, I'm going to make those guys work with me now as a family project. So these cars take off. So what's happened since 23 is the industry's gone back to flat. There have been months where the industry has been down, and I think now it's starting to normalize given all of the context of the global tariff issues that multiple industries are facing right now. So I think we're back in that 5 to 10% growth as an industry. This is just me kind of studying everything over the years and kind of projecting a little bit. I'm also coming off the High Performance Expo, which is a trade show that I helped produce that happened 3 weeks ago in Charlotte. So we had some of the brightest minds on stage talking about this, like, where are we? And the folks that are closer to motorsports are probably doing a little bit better than a traditional, I would say, restoration for your world, more, R&R stuff. But these cars seem to be outpacing that 5 to 10%. And I always think when you see those blips, it gets all the headlines. You guys talked about it. We had it on Cars Illustrated. It went completely crazy because of what we just talked about. Everybody was worried about ripping these cars apart. Take the interior out because it goes faster. Like, I don't give a shit. So
yeah.
But I think these cars are I think they're outpacing the industry. I think they're outpacing collector cars. And, you can look at the Hemi Cudas, you can look at the big block Camaros, you can look at 57 Chevys as kind of the bellwethers, and kind of, if you look at Hagerty data, they probably can tell you exactly where those types of vehicles are. I think 5-liter Mustangs have to be spoken about in that same light. If you're paying attention, you're talking about it now. If not, in a year or 2 years, you're going to realize that's the car. With all due respect to the turbo Buicks, the 5-liter Mustang is the one we got to watch from the 80s and 90s.
Right.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, selfishly, I 1000% agree. I know that there are, I don't know how many people out there that can argue that. And chances are the ones that do want to argue it are just pissed off because they've never had one and always wanted one. And, they're like closet foxbody freaks. But yeah, for me, it's undeniable. Right. But I mean, there is that group out there that just wishes these cars never existed, like Mustang 2 level hate for these bloody fox bodies. And
I think you've gone too far there, but I understand the point.
Yeah.
Well, and it just goes back to like the Ford versus Chevy or Mopar versus whatever. Like, it's, it's like sports, right? Whichever city you're in, and you root for that team and you hate everybody else, and there's always the rival and all that stuff. But interesting to your question, Gary, me personally, I remember when I saw the uprise start pre-COVID. I was following a car on eBay, and I want to say it was like a light titanium silver notch. It had the black belt line, so I think it's probably a 91. And it was kind of like that. You could just tell how clean and crispy the car was. Like, the body lines were sharp, the panel alignment. I think it had a set of like Mavermont ponies on it, the Pony R's, and super, super clean. And the bidding was like 13, 14, 15, and then it's like 16. And I'm like, holy shit, like, that's a lot of money for a Fox body. So it's probably around 2017. And that's sort of, because if you remember, I had no Fox body for a very long time, like pre Australia, I guess. I was foxbody-less, and then going to Dubai, Texas, and then Dubai. I didn't have a fox, so that's almost like what started getting me back into it personally. Right. So I was the guy who got rid of that, and I moved on to my BMWs and whatever. Well, shit, I had my Ferrari, I had everything else. But for whatever reason, holy shit, I'm seeing this increase in value. I'm feeling a little nostalgic. And that's when I went on the hunt for my silver notch, which, whether it was late 2017 or 2018 when I bought that car, you know, I paid $23,000 for it with 23,000 kilometers. And people thought I was fucking nuts. But I saw the value. I knew that the paint alone was saving me 10 grand, because that was the other thing. I think all of the parts to modify, like paint prices, were increasing. So, you know, your Mako couple $100 paint jobs were going away, or your hookup or your buddy or your paint shop weren't doing completes for $3,000 to $5,000 anymore. And then like labor rates, this whole Amazon, all these parts that you can get, you know, that you're trying to get at wholesale cost versus the retail. And then labor rates, as a result, got inflated because you can't charge for parts anymore. Like businesses, shops used to mark up parts, or you had to order them in or whatever it is, so you could profit 10, 20%. Now it's zero on parts. So where do you go? You go with the labor. So I think it was like this, people hitting that age range that Jamie was talking about, right? The 35 to now, you know, about 60, but now we're rewinding the clock almost 10 years ago. So in that nostalgic feeling, so it's like this weird equation of a lot of things. And then I think COVID was just the catalyst that just said now or never to a lot of people.
Perfect storm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to look back on it all now. I don't know. It's always funny for me to, I guess, have this conversation, because I've been nuts about these things for as long as I can remember. So like there's never ever been any dips or it's always wild to watch these crazy run up increases. Like you were saying, Jamie, we just talked about that $200,000 Cobra, which I still can't make sense of, but I know how like the context that you're referring to this in, like these very well could be fighting in the same weight class as the 69 Camaros, you know, at some point in time. And they seem to be doing that. I mean, there's one-offs that are doing better than, you know, so it's wild. But again, I never whether everyone else loves these things or not, like I'm all in, you know what I mean? And always have been. So it's funny to have the conversation about the trends.
Well, imagine, Garrett, like, because you had your green Dragon the whole time.
Yeah.
So imagine you got rid of it. Like, I know that that's probably something you can't even imagine, but let's say, you know what I mean, you sold it because the first kid was on the way, and you did what 90% of, you know, everybody else did. Do you feel like, could you imagine like a point in time of where you would like get that itch and like, shit, like either A, I want to find my old car, or B, I want to make a twin to it?
Yeah, I don't know. That's really hard for me to even try to imagine. And this is, Jamie, I say this all the time, and I know there's people out there that think I'm nuts for it, but like there's not an amount of money in the world that would ever take this green car away from me. And it's not because it has the world's best paint. It's not any of those things. It's that I cannot replace the memories that I have in this car. And it's all those 5 sensory memories, like very, very vivid memories. So it's very hard for me to imagine my life without this car. And hey, I mean,
did the smell change with the vintage air?
No, it's the interior still smells the same. It maybe changed a little bit with the new seats.
Okay, because you were giving me a hard time because when we were talking about this, and now I just kind of put 2 and 2 together that you're like these 5 senses thing. Because you're like, right. Oh, if you change that heater box in your car, you might lose the smell and the memories. And then coming from the guy who ripped the heater box out of his car and put a brand new one that probably smells like, fresh plastics and painted metals and stuff. So I'm wondering if you got like a new, and the Recaros must add, a little bit of a different, more of a leathery flavor. So you had to have lost a couple memories here.
Not really. Like, it still has the same undertone. I can't even believe I'm trying to explain a scent right now, but it's a combination that I could never recreate, because I couldn't sit here and tell you how many coconut air fresheners it's had, how many peach air fresheners, how many whatever, but it's that conglomeration of spilt beer, air fresheners, like you name it, right?
Ass sweat from no AC.
Yeah, that makes the car smell like it does. I mean, yeah, like I cannot recreate that, And we talked about this with Rick Love at Vintage Air, but like I personally feel and believe that like these cars have souls. And this car, I mean, it's I can't say it's as special to me as my kids, but it's damn close. I mean,
of course. But
yes.
that's what makes this special, right? You're not alone. That's what makes this industry so special. They're not metal and glass and plastic and rubber. They're part of your life. They're those memories that mean so much to you, right? I have pictures of my cars at racetracks with my best friends of my life, because we went through that stuff. We figured it out together. They may have beat me one night. I might have gotten them the other way, but those memories, exactly what you're talking about. And it's institutionalized, Gary, because you've got Ford heritage licensing organizations now that are talking about what do we do with the 5-liter Mustang and the parts around it, right? So now you've got corporate structure around it. You've got multiple sanctioning bodies to race these things at. Let's talk about the future of these cars. I don't think it's just restoration, meaning the 1969 Camaro has something the 5-liter Mustang doesn't, and that's a repop body.
Yeah.
Right.
So I have been preaching this. I started real heavy maybe 5 years ago, but there are major players, and I'll name one so I can share this podcast with them, but Jeff Leonard at Classic Industries has every restoration part for your car. The only thing he's missing is a repop body, which he has done on many vintage GM vehicles. He's a massive Camaro guy. Someone's going to repop your notchback and make a fortune and a legacy out of doing it. And I'd love to help lead that. And I know you guys would raise your hands to say, I'll build the first one. Give me a chance to build one. Here's my rendering of what I would do. Mine would be black with a gray vinyl interior and no AC. I think you guys already know what I would do with mine. But the point is, I think you as a platform can look forward now, right? And you can start saying, okay, we've got this incredible legacy. I would argue a way more vibrant history than Mustangs from the 1960s, because we learned from those cars. And you still have that modern touch with fuel injection and overdrive transmissions and the things that made the car viable street cars when Cobra Jets and top loaders haven't been fun to drive around for 40 years, right? So I think your future's super bright in this platform. I'm really bummed the NMRA went away. Steve Wolcott did such an incredible job with that, and brought so many industries together around this little Mustang. But Kenny Bell repopped his supercharger, right? You got retro Vortex superchargers. The other one on my list, and I sent it to you guys before this, is I have talked to a company at the High Performance Expo. If I can get a GT40 tubular intake manifold, they will remanufacture that. So I thought I would come on and ask you guys, if anybody's got a sample of a GT40 intake, I need to borrow it for a couple months.
I got one here.
All right, you're my guy. We're going to repop. This is right. This is no bullshit. This is real. We're going to remanufacture the tubular GT40 intake manifold.
Sweet. And you can even open the throat up a little bit more so nobody has to do the baseball bat mod.
Whatever you want to do it. You can help design it with me. I've got a company lined up. They just need a sample and we're in business.
Well, how cool would this be, Chris? Because Mike Johnson gave us that one.
Yep.
We should donate that to the cause. What a wicked story that would add to that GT40 upper and lower.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. I'll get you an address and we're going to make some parts happen.
Oh, cool. Okay, Jamie. So I got questions for you now. I want your thoughts and theories on this. So let's say, okay, is it safe to say that the coupe is the kind of the pick of the litter, even still to this day, right? The notch.
I think for a couple reasons. For me, it's the most desirable platform personally, but also as I look out in the industry, that's the most desirable car. The other reason is you can sell the notchback to the racing community. Every street racer, every drag racer wants a notchback, right? So,
yep. Okay. Yeah. So let's just say that whoever it is that's going to repop a body goes, okay, we see the value in doing a coupe. We're going to do a coupe. Now, does that hurt or help the value of an OEM coupe?
I think there's a couple conditions. If you can, you're always going to be asked, is this an original?
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to depend on the quality of the repop body. Some of the earlier repop Camaros, Chevelles were not great. They were off the original tooling, and the tooling hadn't held up well over the years.
Okay.
I don't think anybody would say that that's inaccurate. So if a new body were made and it was super good, which production tolerances have gotten better over the years, it might hurt the value, but I think, right, you're always going to want the original. You would, Gary, I would, but
yep.
For a fun street car, for a race car, you would buy a new body. Just start with easy, brand new metal that's not rusted, right? So
I think a good comparison would be a 4-cylinder car versus a V8 car, right? Because people argue that the 4-cylinder car wasn't beat on because it didn't have the power, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, that VIN number denotes the pedigree of the vehicle and the overall value.
That's good.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, I think the argument would be, or I guess a better comparison would be a repop body versus a 4-cylinder car. I wonder how that would, how people would view that. Because the V8 VIN will always be the V8 VIN, and that's been shown through these repop Camaros and Chevelles and everything else, right?
Yeah. Like I think it's one of those situations that, hell, you could run out of beer talking about, right? Because if there's more coupes available after a repop body, well, now all of a sudden they're not that rare, but you've still got that. Well, is this thing VIN'd from Ford or is this thing a U-built, right? So like there's all these different paths that you can make arguments on both sides. I think personally, like, the originals will always be the original. It's almost going to be like, well, you could use this GT40 intake as an example too, right? Like, even though this one could be opened up and breathe like an Edelbrock Performer RPM intake or whatever, right? It's still not the original one, right? It's a repop, or it's whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I don't know. I don't see any issue with making a repop body at all. I would warmly welcome.
Your mint original is always, it's going to be a small number at this point in time. Sure. Like, you're not going to, let's take the Reef that sold, and that the Reef actually had more miles than it should have sold for, right? Like, as soon as you pass 10,000 miles, you got to drive a car at the end of the day, right? Like, it's not a wrapper. It could be super clean. I'm sure it is, but you can't, it's a different category. So I think for anybody who's like going out and possibly trying to find a decently clean body that's got 50, 60, 100, 150,000 miles on it, this will not hurt any of that average market. I don't see it. I think a lot of cars might become parts cars that should be parts cars, instead of, asking, oh, it's a notchback, it's worth 10 grand. Yeah, maybe now as a donor, to put this ultra clean body that isn't twisted and the torque boxes are mint and there's no rust and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, you'll never take away from the low mileage stuff. Like that market's always going to be there just because of what it is my take.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I mean, I never even thought much about it from the mileage perspective, right? It probably would hurt those higher mild cars. Wouldn't make them as desirable, maybe, because, once they're miled out, I mean, it's kind of like, well, whatever, right? Moving on. So yeah, it's a good point. I know there's lots of neat angles that you can approach it from. What do you think? Do you got any idea, Jamie, like what one of these repop bodies would sell for?
No, I mean, theoretical. I mean, we could look at some pricing of some comparable cars, right? But
what would a Camaro cost you?
Like you're 25 to get it and another 25 to 50 to make it right. So,
oh wow.
So but for a high-end street build, they make a lot of sense.
Well, put it this way, like Roadster Shop has seen the value in the foxbody platform to make both fast track and spec chassis, and a loaded out spec chassis, or either one. I think you're looking at around $30,000. So I think that's sort of almost like this benchmark of, okay, we know how much body and paint is, we know how much, time. And I've said it before, I think a lot of people don't understand what it takes when you're restoring the car that has had factory undercoating, or had undercoating over the years, or had a leaky power steering pump, or was parked underneath a pine tree. Like, just to tear down and clean that process, to even get it to the point of, okay, now we're actually starting to put epoxy on things, or painting floors, or doing whatever. Like, that body would save so many man hours of labor just in preparation alone. Because very rarely do you find the car that doesn't, the frame rails aren't filled with salt and dirt and oil and grease and whatever that you're trying to blow that stuff out of. So yeah, I don't know, I'm trying to put a value on, because let's say say the same thing, 25 grand for the body, and you got another 25 to make it right, 50, you got your spec chassis with everything else. You're talking $100,000 fox bodies, but that's sort of the reality of a build of one that you're probably not starting with very good bones to begin with.
Right. But I mean, I'm almost leaning towards the argument, if you did go down the chassis route with one of these repop bodies, do you have a fox body anymore? I know you do, you have the look, but I think the argument could be made, now you've just got a 64 Ford on a Crown Vic frame. But
look at all the Resto Mod stuff selling at Barrett Jackson. Look at the value on that. Look at all the chassis stuff. Look at Martin Brothers' approach, for instance. They just flat out said, if it doesn't have a Roadster Shop chassis underneath it, we're not going to fab it or build it. It's not worth the time or the aggravation when you got something that's literally perfected and technically what the people want.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I mean, this for me is where we take this car, right? And you guys have the platform to think through some of these things. And I think it's smart to look at where other iconic vehicles have made their run through the industry and are still going, because this car is in the same position. And these are the conversations you have about classic Chevys and classic Mopars, for crying out loud, right? Look at the cost of any Hemi car.
Yeah.
You're going to have the rarity with some of these 5-liter Mustangs, and it might be silly to some people, but for us, it's obvious. It's obvious.
No, I think there's definitely value and benefit. Obviously, if somebody repops it and they say it's $50,000, maybe a different conversation. But I think if it's within the realm of you know, neighboring classic car bodies that are available, I think it'd be a winner for sure.
Okay, Jamie, I got another brain buster for you.
Well, guys,
so
we're 2 hours into this. Can I come back for part 2 on this sometime, or how long do we go, Gary? What's our time on these things?
We go till we run out of ideas, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, holy smokes!
We can do a part 2 if you want, Jamie. We don't want to keep you up all night. By all means.
Well, let's finish with this.
Left us with, like, if you left right now, me and Gary would probably be going back and forth about hypotheticals for another hour.
Yeah, I can't do that. I love you guys, you know that, but I can't do that.
Okay, well, let's leave it at this with this final question for you. So I'll paint the picture. So Jamie, let's just say that it was an 87. Yeah, it was an 87. Black coupe, roll up windows, whatever. Let's say that thing got put in bubble wrap back in 87. Okay. And you hypothetically find it, and the guy wants $100,000 for it, let's say. And let's say bodies get repopped, roadster shop chassis, whatever motor you want, on and on and on. And it's going to be right in around $100,000. Which one are you buying?
You always get that original. The original, right. They're always going to hold the value, right? But we're sick people, right? We have 15 cars, so the answer is both, right? Because that's what this industry is based on. So I love car people. We don't care about money. It's completely disposable. So,
right. Yeah. No, I just find it that
Gary, you just broke what I said. You can't compare the low mile original to something that's modded out. The question is, you find the car, it's got 100,000 miles on it. You know,
no, because that's unfair. It'd have to be a low mile car. Because if you're comparing a brand new off the shelf Martin Brothers built,
no, because he's going to take the 100,000 mile car and he's going to restore it. Are you going to restore the clapped out 100,000 mile car, or are you going to say, screw that, let me just get this fresh body and I'm going to build it my way, possibly better than what it is, versus trying to deal with all the skeletons and that's the reasoning behind those bodies. Like I said, you don't buy that instead of the low mileage wrapper car that you're just going to not drive and enjoy, in my opinion.
So Gary, here's what I want. I want you to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Let's get connected, right? I want to be able to chase you down when I need you. Chris, I know real well, but I need you, let's be texting, but maybe all three of us should be on the same text. That way I can just monitor you guys closer.
Okay, deal.
Check in when I need to make sure you're doing okay.
Yeah.
And then, please check out Cars Illustrated. I bought that. I bought all rights to that magazine and the Empire. I call it Empire. It's a modest little 12-book run over 10 years ago. Just because of this, just because I want to be able to share that, and so people can understand where the love for these cars came from. So, go to carsillustrated.com, grab yourself a t-shirt, buy a reprint, have fun, share in this great hobby that this car has created for us. And it's been an honor to spend some time with you guys and talk about my favorite car of all time. So I appreciate the chance to get some time with you guys. Thank you.
Awesome. And then thank you so much for coming on and sharing that. 100%. I'll go download my issue here that I got on the wall. And we'll connect and we'll get these GT40s rolling.
All right. I'll send you an address. I'll get it hooked up. We're gonna repop some parts, and we're gonna keep this old car going. I don't like to say they're old, but keep these 5-liter Mustangs rolling, right?
Deal.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate the opportunity to hang out with you. Have a great night.
You too.
You too. Thanks, Jamie.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye now.